what it portends for China and China's ambitions and our vital interests more broadly. I'm very pleased to say, as we have done on a number of occasions in the recent months, we have with us by video one of, I think, our country's preeminent Middle East experts. His name is Dr. David Wormser. He is a man who has served at high levels of the government, working at the State Department with an Undersecretary of State, in the National Security Council with its National Security Advisor, and in the Office of the Vice President, where he served as a Middle East expert. He has been a naval intelligence officer as well, and currently is with the Center for Security Policy, where he directs its Mideast programs. We are always excited to have David Wormser with us because of his insights and his recommendations, and we look forward to taking them in board in connection with what we've proposed be his topic. Is the so-called 12-day war actually ended? And if not, what role will the CCP play in the next phase of an endless war? Let's go to Dr. Wormser now.
Thank you, Frank. It's quite an honor and a pleasure to be with everybody. I'm now in Jerusalem. Now it's a quiet city. Thank God, after a week and 2 weeks of a lot of missiles. At any rate, where are we and how does this connect with the larger global strategic situation? Well, obviously, one of the big events over the last few days was the ceasefire, and it is basically holding, but it is a very fragile ceasefire. The Yemenis are continuing to fire missiles. Obviously, that can't be solved without Iran stopping them. And here we are. And the first problem with the ceasefire, which is that the proxies of Iran continue to act, ultimately can only be shut down if you deal with the head of the snake. But right now, there's a ceasefire with the head of the snake. So the tentacles proceed to fight. The head of the snake does not. The second thing is there's been a few little Iranian violations in terms of drones toward the north. But really what's the most concerning part of this ceasefire is the fact that now we're getting reports in all over the place that the Iranians are crawling all over Natanz trying to retrieve the nuclear material that is there. They're doing the same at Fordo. And this really cuts at the problem here. This is a problem that has been dealt with very heavily. And I think the Israelis have done a very thorough job. And then the United States action really brought home the bacon, so essentially, on shutting down the nuclear program now. But the regime is in place. Remnants are there. There's still some scientists around. There's know-how. So Iran is working to reconstitute its nuclear program already now. That is why even before it is digging through rubble to find its leadership or its operatives, the IRGC operatives, it is already prioritizing trying to resurrect its nuclear program. So now we're headed to a situation where President Trump is going to give them again an attempt to now negotiate their way out of a nuclear program, specifically the enrichment. But to me, it seems unlikely that Iran will give in, which means this ceasefire most likely does not have great longevity, and we may in a few weeks be back to where we were. Now, where does this get very worrisome is during the war, the Israelis were degrading the Iranian structures, all of them. They were degrading the nuclear program, they were degrading the missile program, they were degrading the regime's command and control, they were degrading the regime's leadership. And what is happening now is all that is being repaired, it is being worked around, and most disturbing, Iran has access to the outside world. It has access specifically to China. And if one notes, during the declaration of the ceasefire, President Trump did note that now China can trade oil with Iran. This is disturbing because that's money. That's resources that the Iranian regime desperately needs right now to rebuild. We know from past, and we already are seeing it with the prioritization of salvage being given to the nuclear program. We can imagine that the parallel activity will happen with money. Money will surge for Iran to rebuild its proxy network, its nuclear program, and its missiles. So that's disturbing. The second thing is we're hearing reports, unclear how accurate they are, but it seems to have some legs because they're coming from more or less more dependable sources, that the United States is also now adding incentives to Iran to give up its nuclear program, which would be, again, some form of money. One number put out was $30 billion. Again, this would have to be verified, but if so, it is dangerous because the problem is not the nuclear program. In fact, I don't even think the problem is the missile program. I think the problem is that Iran in current constitution is a major element in the larger Soviet, or sorry, not Soviet, Russian and Chinese network of nations that is trying to straddle the Eurasian continent and trying to penetrate into the Fertile Crescent to the Mediterranean. And as long as this regime survives, and I think there is a real shot for throwing this regime so far back on its hind legs that the Iranian people really have an opportunity, the first time, perhaps in a generation or two, to take matters into their own hands and to take back their country. Unfortunately, all this deal-making, this ceasefire, is convincing the Iranian people that they are the pawn and they will be sacrificed for the larger goal of a larger deal. This is unfortunate because really Iran, the more this war went on, became very clear this is the linchpin between the two great competing geopolitical blocs. We all knew about the supply and the arsenal that Iran had become essentially for the Russian military campaign in Ukraine. So that's one thing. And the Israelis, of course, did grave damage to that industrial structure. So this helps Europe quite a bit, but it's only temporary. What's more important is that the Chinese look at the landmass of Iran as a critical element, first of all, to create a much more solid Belt and Road structure, which is really, in this case, the Silk Road structure that attaches to Iran, which is the critical end of the Silk Road, and then goes to the Fertile Crescent. So it really makes whether Iran falls and goes to the west, determines whether the entire sort of axis or the fulcrum of the Middle East is turning and weighting toward the Indian Abraham Accords, Israel, Greece, the whole belt of nations that we loosely call the IMEC structure, the India Middle East corridor structure, or whether it turns the other way and it has really a huge buy-in to the Belt and Road structure, which is the Chinese strategic, hard to say how to describe it, the Chinese strategic campaign to bring large land masses into their orientation. And it also links up with the Russians, who have this north-south corridor that they keep talking about, that they hope will link up with Pakistan on south. So we really do have a large geostrategic play here. I really see the Iranian survival is really a question of large geostrategy. If they survive, we've essentially given an assist to the Chinese and Russians. If they do not, I think we have dealt a grave blow to the Chinese-Russian geopolitical structure that they're trying to create. So that's sort of the larger geostrategic question. In the region, also, we have a situation where all the nations of the region are hedging. They're hedging because they're just not sure whether Israel, India, United States will prevail, and it's safe to throw in to throw in 100% behind that alliance, or whether they still need to hedge. And that's another geostrategic asset for China in this situation. China is making the point that they're out there. For your own sake, China can deliver the danger or can deliver some protection from the danger of Iran, from the danger even of Turkey, because Turkey is slowly easing itself into this Chinese bloc as well. So China becomes the power broker to guarantee security for countries in the region who are very nervous about the American structure, the American-based structure providing security. Great deal of confidence was built around Israel, but then the ceasefire was rapidly concluded, and I think it has a negative impact on Saudi Arabia and others. So my sense is they will still continue to hedge, and they will continue to hedge with China, because China can't protect them directly, but China can weigh in with Iran and keep Iran from acting against them. So to some extent, this has made China more powerful. As with the Ukraine war, China emerges from this conflict somewhat strengthened, not because of the conflict itself. That was a devastating blow and almost a fatal blow to Chinese influence in the region, because if Iran had gone down, the regime had gone down, it would have been a devastating, catastrophic blow for Chinese strategic interests. But now you have a weak, limping, desperate Iran trying to resurrect, will not give in, will not surrender its nuclear program, and will not geopolitically either shift or calm down. So as a result, it has one address now to go to, which is China, and it will insert itself under Chinese umbrella and nurturing much more as a result, not of the war, but as an inconclusive ceasefire that left them in power. So at any rate, I think at this point we need to just depart from some of the nitty-gritty and the trees, and we need to look at the forest and how China is emerging from this conflict strengthened, largely because of missteps at the end of the war. Well, I'll leave it at that, and I've already gone on probably a bit too long, but thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wormser. Always your length